Hi, all. Welcome back to another episode of Love Dripping from the Walls. And I am so excited to bring you this episode today. We are going to be talking with Justin Blaney about self-love. And we cover a multitude of topics. Justin is someone who is interested in everyone being happy and living a life that they love. And really, that starts with self-love. And so I hope you enjoy this conversation. Before we get started, on whatever platform that you are listening from or watching from, if you like this content, please go ahead and hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, or download this episode. I hope you enjoy.
I don't know if you're going to say you hate them or you love them or you think they're filthy. Like,
I think that they really work for some people and they really don't work for other people. I that's what I mean by case to case basis.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Is that some people it's like, oh man, like killing the beard, dude. Like, yes, awesome. And some people it's like, just stop, don't. Let other people do the beard thing. Have someone else have something else be your thing, not the beard
yeah.
thing. But
I started growing one like 2 years ago, and I always thought it was going to be really itchy, and it was for like a month. But once I got used to it, I like it, and I don't think I'm ever going back. So
awesome.
Everybody better get used to it.
Yeah, I think that you do great with a beard.
Yeah, it's nice. It keeps my face warm in the winter, you know. When I go skiing, I don't need as much face protection. I don't get sunburns on my chin. I mean, that was a big problem, you know. A lot of burnt chins for a long time there.
I feel that way about my long hair because sometimes I'm like, oh, I should just totally chop off because there's been times in my life where I've had like a pixie cut, and there's been times in my life when I've had like a bob like right up to, you know, my jawline right here. And I don't look bad. I definitely don't look bad with short hair at all.
Yeah, I look over here sometimes because I've got a bigger screen so I can see you better. But yeah,
cool.
I think you have lovely hair.
Thank you.
Have you been cutting it yourself during the quarantine?
I did. This is all me. This whole swoopy thing right here. It's all me.
Well, you nailed it, I gotta say.
Thanks. And then I was showing my mom the other day. You can't really, because it's long enough that you can't really see it, but I gave myself layers. So like top layer.
I was working on some of that too. It's just, I don't know if I have quite enough to do the layers on top here.
It's actually like
that's nice.
6 inches.
That takes skills.
Thank you. I taught myself how to cut my hair in college. It was a way to cut costs in college, and so I cut my own hair for like 4 years in college.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I just decided that it was, you know, I'm just going to continue to do that. I've gotten some really good professional haircuts, but honestly, when I cut my own hair, I tend to like it more. I don't know. So,
that's great.
Yeah.
It's like art, you know? When you do it yourself, it's more meaningful, the art.
That's right. I mean, that could be it. I like it more because I'm like proud of myself.
Yeah. I was pretty proud when I was like starting to do this, but it's like really hard. You're like looking in the mirror and you want to turn the razor one way, but it's turning the other way because everything's reversed. And then like shaving the back of my neck, that was like one of the hardest things I've ever done in my life. So can't wait to.
You did cut your own hair?
Oh yeah, I've been having, because like my hair grows really fast, and I'm like, I've got a pretty big like monkey gene where I just have like lots of hair. So my whole neck would be covered in hair if I didn't like get back there and try to trim it at some point. It's one of my greatest talents is growing hair, except on top. I lost the skill there.
Totally winning at. Oh my gosh. Well,
so what are we doing here? We're talking about
Yeah. So,
Love.
Paul, thank you so much for coming on my podcast. We've been talking about this for a couple months, and I'm just
Yes.
so excited
I've been
that
looking forward to it.
we're able to do this. Just super happy about it. And yeah, one of the things. So the name of my podcast is Love Dripping from the Walls.
Hmm.
And it's a lot centered around, love, sex, and relationships, which is, something that we're going to talk about today as well. But the thing about love dripping from the walls, like having that palpable feeling of love in your life.
Hmm.
And you can't have that palpable feeling of love in your life without other things in your life working as well.
Hmm.
You can have an amazing relationship, but if your finances are shit, they're all, there's going to be things that are happening in the back of your head where you really need to
Hmm.
be present. If you're not proud of yourself, if you don't think that you're doing a good job, if something else is off in your life, and it divides the ability that you're able to have that palpable love
Hmm.
for yourself. So yeah, I do talk a lot about love, sex, and relationships, and center it around that. But it is really loose about those topics, like other outside topics as well, because you really can't have that palpable feeling of love
Hmm.
without all those other things in your life. And
Yeah, we're like a system, and one piece affects the others, right? We can't just isolatedly fix one thing and then it's affected by all the other things in our life. I think that's really beautiful and true.
yeah, exactly. So, and we've had I've been reading your book, the
Oh,
relationship
thank you.
book. Yeah, well, thank you for giving it to me. I apologize for not reading it faster. I thought that I would be reading it faster, and
I was really upset. I was checking my clock. I was like, what's going on? Why isn't every day I was like, why hasn't she called me and told me that she loves my book?
well, I've just been sitting here like any day Justin's gonna call me and tell me how I'm a terrible friend and that he's never gonna speak to me ever again.
Well, thankfully we have enough bond and history, that we can get over these kinds of things. So
We're very mature in this way.
yeah. Yeah, no, thank you so much. And some of the feedback that you've given already has been really helpful.
Yeah, I've been writing in the margins and stuff, and the where I'm at right now is actually really um I was gonna say, where did I put it? It's in my backpack, which is by the front door, because I was reading it on the roof this morning.
Ooh, nice.
I know. We have this rooftop area in our apartment building, and so that's been really nice. But yeah, I was reading your book on the roof this morning, and it was really brilliant because what I have been focusing on is, taking action, right? Because the first part of your book is, it seems to me be about, your mindset
Hmm.
and how you came to be the way that you are, your past, decisions that you've made, people that have influenced you, and things like that.
Hmm.
And yeah, a lot about who right? And the part that I'm on right now is now shifting towards, seems to me to be shifting more towards the present. Like, what are you doing now? What action are you taking now? What's your mindset now?
Hmm.
And which is really brilliant because that's just something that I've been focusing on just personally and in my business. It's like, what action am I taking right now? And it's also really pertinent to what's going on in the world right now as well, which is, what action are you taking now? We are people.
Mm.
I'm just going to assert this about
Yeah.
you, is that we are people who really care about the well-being of others. And with what's been going on, with the murder of George Floyd, and with the protests and riots and things with police brutality, it's, the question is, what are you doing right now?
Yeah. It's what I find is we tend to just maintain the status quo. Like, as creatures, we might get passionate about something, or we might think, I really want to do this thing, but we tend to just go back to the status quo. And actually, you brought up the current events, and it's a perfect example of it. It's been breaking my heart lately because we see all this passion, but it's like, this isn't like the first time by a million that this has happened. And so what we tend to do is we get passionate, or we think about something, but then we don't do something. And I think that is the critical difference. I talk about it in my book in regards to like building the best possible life for yourself that you could ever experience. It requires making decisions and making hard choices. And it's not like it's easy to do that. So I think that's the same thing that's going on today. I think we need to make real choices and take action versus just going back to, well, it's easier to just watch TV and go to work and post something on Instagram every once in a while, So.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And yeah, I think so. First of all, we kind of jumped into things. I'm gonna interrupt for a second.
Okay.
And just introduce you real quickly here.
Great. I've been waiting for my big introduction.
Who is this guy with a beard?
That's all people know about me, is I have a beard. That's fine. That's pretty much the most important thing anyways.
Right. Yes. Your prestige and your beard, they go hand in hand. All right. So first of all, this is my friend, Justin. Justin, it was so interesting how we met, and I'm going to interrupt myself and just only say that your book is so interesting in how we met as well. Is just like how people can meet each other and build those relationships. So that's all I'll say about that for right now. But who Justin is a professor at the University of Washington. And this is something I didn't know about you actually, but the best-selling author of 15 books, including 2 being released in the next year, one of which I have the privilege of reading right now. And you are the creator of a free app on Android and Apple that translates for the modern reader 2,500 years of wisdom on living your best life. And I will testify personally that I love your app.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, it was something when we first met, I was like, who is this guy? And it was like one of the first things that I discovered about you. And I really do. I love it. And
that's really great. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you for creating it. And you reach more than 1 million followers through your app and your book and speaking and on social media. And so that's really incredible. And that, I think it just shows the depth of your knowledge and the care and thoughtfulness that you bring to everything that you do, that people would be so drawn to that.
Well, thank you. That's quite an introduction. Yeah, I a lot of these things are just born out of things that I want to do. I really think that's kind of how we should all decide what we do with our life, is like do things that we want to do that make us happy. And it doesn't really, like, the numbers are wonderful. I love reaching people, but I would do the exact same thing if I was reaching no people. Like I would just because I'm doing what I enjoy. So I think that it's something I had to learn, actually, because for many years I was doing things for other reasons, to make money or to get famous or to become influential. And as I've let those things go, it seems like, 1, I'm happier, but 2, I would say my impact is growing too. So it's kind of a nice lesson to learn.
Yeah. You write. It seems to be your main theme is really living a life that you love, and to be centered around that. And just what you said was really poignant, because I think a lot of us, myself absolutely included, can be motivated by how many followers can you get, or how much money can you make, or what's the biggest influence or impact, or some sort of goal in that realm.
Mm-hmm.
Where then when you start to make the shift to doing something that you love and letting all of that go, was that scary for you?
Was it scary? It was necessary.
Mm-hmm.
I would say, as I've just been on a path of discovery, not only about myself, but what does it mean to live a happy life, and what are we doing here? What's our purpose? All of these things that we all think about.
Mm-hmm.
And I started just finding different parts of my life or my psychology or the way that I was approaching things that were, again, like the status quo, the default, whatever I had inherited from the way I was raised or what I had learned.
Mm-hmm.
And I was seeing that these things were holding me back from happiness. And one of them is like this pursuit of followers, which is really rampant.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know exactly. I mean, it's probably a pretty long story. A lot of it really ties into self-love. It's believing that we don't need validation to love ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And if we can let that go, I find it's just so much easier. It's happier. It's more fun. And I think people respond better too, because I think we're very good at reading people. It's
Mm-hmm.
very interesting. We developed as a species the ability to read nonverbal communication for hundreds of thousands of years, maybe millions of years, before we developed the ability to use language.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's why we're so good at reading nonverbal. And that's why nonverbal communication is so critical to meaning and actually, communicating a message, because we can lie with our words, but we can't really lie with our face and our nonverbal communication skills,
Mm-hmm.
because it's more on a subconscious level. So I think people are really good at reading other people's motivations or reading into them, and I think when we live a more authentic life that starts with embracing and loving ourselves, that
Mm-hmm.
I have found, and I believe that other people respond better. They they they're more attracted. It's more magnetic to have self-love
Mm-hmm.
than it is to have fake self-love covered up by a false sense of confidence
Mm-hmm.
or hubris, or all these other things. We put on these masks and we do all this stuff to try to posture ourselves so that people perceive us in the way that we want to be perceived. And I just find, why don't you just be the person that you want to be perceived as? And it just works a lot easier.
Yeah. Takes a lot less work and effort.
Yeah, I mean, it seems kind of obvious, but we all do it. I've done it. I still do it, and I just am trying to do that less. It's something, and it's not. I don't want to just always be trying to change myself and improve myself for the sake of change and improvement. Some things maybe don't need to be changed. Maybe that's fine. But if it's inhibiting my happiness, then that's a motivating factor for me to want to go out and change it. Because that's, to me, I really think that's the point of life, is just to enjoy it and have fun, which I think a big part of that is helping other people. I think that makes us happy. But I think it ultimately comes back to making ourselves happy, enjoying life. And I don't mean ignoring sadness. I mean, we could talk about all this for a long time. Part of being happy is embracing sadness.
Mm.
And so, yeah, we can get into all of that, but I'm not sure where you want to take the conversation.
We totally could get into that, because the idea and the discovery of self-love has inadvertently been the underlying topic for this season of the podcast. I didn't come into season 2 being like, this is the self-love season, but it seems to be the underlying issue that keeps getting brought up. And so, and I know that you have really powerful story and insights, and exactly what you just said, which I think is really important, is that it's not like you discovered something and then it's like bada bing, bada boom, now you're living this perfect life. It's that it's an ongoing discovery and process, now as
Hmm.
well. And
Yeah.
so absolutely, let's talk about self-love. Let's talk
All
about
right.
happiness. Let's talk about embracing sadness, and that
Yeah.
self-love doesn't mean things are perfect all the time.
No, no, not at all. I mean, I could talk about a story, like my personal story might be a good place to start, and
Sure.
how I've kind of learned some of these things. And I can also talk about the science and the philosophy behind how it works and kind of what's actually going on inside our brains. Would
Yeah.
you care for either one of those first?
I feel like
Should we
it's
start
like
with the
a
science or the story?
menu. Here's my menu. Please choose.
Yeah,
Um,
which one?
I would love to hear your personal story, and I would also love to hear the science and the philosophy behind it. Can we get
Yeah, I bet we could do
all
both.
of it?
I don't have anything going on for the next 20 minutes or not. You got me longer than that. um, okay. So, uh, I, my story, to understand me, you have to go back to really from the very beginning. And I start my book out this way. And it was very uncomfortable for me to share my personal stories because I've always tried to make everything I do not be about me. But I realized that I am me, and my work is me, and
Yes.
so it's you can't have one without the other. So I've kind of tried to embrace this more, but it's still a little bit uncomfortable for me. Um, but I was born the son of a drug dealer and con man in LA, and that's my heritage. That's where I come from. And my dad, I don't really have a lot of memories of him, but my mom ran away from him when I was a kid, and I haven't really had a great relationship with him. And I didn't realize until I started going to counseling 4 or 5 years ago, which I think every single person alive should have a counselor. Not necessarily to see every week, but everybody should see a counselor, I think, from time to time. And it's nice when you're going through something, you can ramp it up. And when you're not going through something, you can dial it back. But I think it's very essential. So I started seeing a counselor, and he was helping me see how my I had an abandonment issue that was really driving a lot of things in my life. And it didn't make sense because I never really felt like mad at my dad, or I didn't really miss him. But in the subconscious level, I could start to see as like, man, a lot of my decisions look like a person who is really afraid that people are going to abandon him. And so I became, it was really driving like a lot of different aspects of my life. And so that's kind of the very beginning of where I came from. My mom ran away and met another guy, ironically by the same name. My stepdad and my dad are both named Roger. So, and then I was raised very Christian. And so all through my younger years, I was a pretty conservative Christian, and I really believed. A lot of people ask, like, did you really believe? And I really did. I really believed with all my heart. And at the age of 15, I started dating a girl, and we ended up having a baby, and we got married when I was 17. And then we wanted to have our kids together. We were in love, and it was a wonderful thing. We were very judged by the church and all of our Christian family, but then we had a couple of more kids, and so I was in my 20s raising a family of 5, and that's basically my 20s, working like several jobs. All through this time, we were very poor, and I was quite happy at first, but it was more based on like an infatuation, and also I'm just a very positive person. And as we kind of moved through life, my ex-wife and I were now divorced. I realized that we really just didn't have very much in common. And we'd met when we were young, and we had a lot of fun together, and we had a wonderful time. But there was not a lot there to build on. But I was very afraid to do anything about that, really to talk to her about it, to seek divorce or anything else, because I was afraid that there was nobody in the world that was going to love me. But I'd found like one person that was willing to love me, and that was my one shot. That was a really big factor in staying married for 19 years. And I was getting, like, the last 5 years, I was getting more and more depressed, and I realized that I was just very lonely. And it was even worse because I was in a marriage and I had family and friends, but I was like, why am I so lonely? And we all, I think, have known that. Like, you can be surrounded by a million people, and sometimes that's when you feel the most lonely, right?
Yeah,
because
sure.
you feel like you shouldn't be lonely. Why am I lonely? There's all these friends and people, and
Yeah.
but loneliness is not about proximity. It's about heart-to-heart connection, I think. In terms of, if you're missing that heart-to-heart connection, I think that's one way that we can feel lonely.
Yeah.
I also think loneliness comes out of a lack of self-love, and I was lacking self-love a lot, and so I was getting more and more depressed, and I realized that I was getting to the point of being suicidal, and I got down to the point where I was like, I'm either gonna die or get divorced. And at this point, I was still a Christian, and I thought it was a sin, and I thought I might go to hell if I get divorced. But I thought, I don't know, and I don't want to kill myself. This is like my one shot at life. And so I asked my ex-wife for a divorce, and we ended up going through that. And long story short, if you fast forward to today, I think things are pretty amiable, and I really think that worked out. I think that was probably one of the best decisions I've made in my life, and also by far the most difficult and hardest decision I've ever made.
Yeah, absolutely.
But in the last 5 years since that happened, because I was able to make that decision, and I started saying, well, if I can make this decision for me, why can't other people make their own decisions that don't seem to fit the paradigm or the mold that I thought was the truth? And I remember one day standing in like a Barnes and Noble and looking at like the religion section, and I was looking at thousands of books from Christianity, Buddhism, Islam, everything, right? And I was like, even in the Christian section, every single book has a slightly different version of the truth. Like, they're all saying something different. If they weren't saying something different, why would we need two books, right?
Lots of books, yeah.
So then I'm like, well, so they disagree with each other, but they all think that in the big things they're right. But then I was like, well, you get to a certain point where it's different enough that they're saying, well, that's wrong, and you're going to go to hell if you believe that. But it's like, of these thousands of books, every single one of them had a different truth, and I'm like, how am I supposed to know who's right? And so all of this, I'm kind of trying to give you little vignettes into how my mindset opened up and allowed me to consider things that I had never considered before. And one thing I think a lot of people don't understand about people that believe things that don't make sense to them. For example, right now we have, in a lot of cases, we have Republicans and Democrats arguing over whether we should wear a face mask. It's like, why are we arguing over whether to wear a face mask? Is that really a controversial thing? There's a sickness going around. Maybe we should put the face mask on.
Yeah.
And so what it comes to is it always goes down to this foundational assumption. And the foundational assumption is what everything is built upon. And so when you get up here at the top layers, you can't communicate, you can't understand each other, because you're seeing the world through such a different lens. That until you go down to the most foundational level, which for me was realizing that Christianity was not the one truth, and that there was no way to know, I had to kind of rewire my brain at that most foundational level. And that has allowed me to go on a journey the last 5 years of incredible growth. I went from being suicidal to, I'm incredibly happy. I love my life. I have wonderful friends. It was another difference. Like, before, I had friends, but I didn't feel close to them. I didn't feel like they knew me. And and it makes total sense now, because I wasn't, it was like a masked version of me, but I didn't really realize that I had all this stuff attached to me that didn't really belong.
Yeah.
And I see myself now as getting to explore, who am I really? And then as I express who I really want to be and who I love, I'm finding it quite easy to make friends. And I couldn't for like most of my life.
Yeah.
But now I'm like, well, this is who I am. And there's lots of other people that seem to like that, but it's authentic. So it's real. It's not based on me trying to be something that doesn't quite feel right or fit, or, and so that's where I think authenticity and self-love is critical to attracting other people. And I think there's always examples, and there's really hateful people, there's sociopaths, there's all these people that can attract a following, and that's interesting. And I think the human brain and psyche is fascinating, but I don't think that's like a best practice. It's like, if it does work, it's not something I'm really interested in. I'm interested in living a really whole life. And so over the last 5 years again, and like how I met you, we would have never met if I'd been in this past life. But now I was able to do the things that I wanted to do, and act the way I wanted to act, and dress the way I wanted to dress, and explore the things I wanted to explore.
Mm-hmm.
And I had to make a lot of tough decisions. I had to do a lot of personal work. But what I love most is I know what it's like to be at the end of my rope, and I know what it's like to believe there's no hope. And I also know that I was able to turn my life around. So it's one of the things that really drives me to help people, because I know there's a lot of people that feel the way that I felt.
Right.
And I want to be like, look, there's a way out. I didn't think there was a way out. And I want to share that with as many people as possible, because I just think we all deserve to be happy and to live the best life that we can. And I think most of us, and all of us to a certain extent, we are the primary limiting forces in our life.
Mm-hmm.
So we think all these things are holding us back, but nothing holds us back more than our own self. We say no to ourselves more than anyone else ever says no to us.
Absolutely.
We hate ourselves more than anybody else ever hates us. We say things to ourselves in the mirror or in our head. If someone else said it to a friend, we would disown them. We'd be like, I can't be your friend if you say that to someone that I care about. And yet we say it to ourselves like constantly, right? So I know I went on for a little bit, but that's kind of the boundaries for my story, and kind of how I got from there to here. And then through that, I became very interested in the science and the philosophy behind all of these things, which I'd love to talk about, but I don't want to completely dominate the conversation. If you have any thoughts or questions, or
I asked you on here because I want to hear you talk. So definitely don't feel self-conscious about talking a lot at all. Because this is exactly why I asked you to be on my podcast, is because there's so many great things about what you said that I think a lot of people like you said, a lot of people can relate to, because you're right, you're not the only person who has been at the end of their rope, or if there's somebody listening right now who is at the end of their rope, that really there is that hope that you can make those decisions that will change your life, that's possible. And that regardless of the circumstances of your life, you really, thank you so much for sharing so vulnerably about some of the things that have happened in your life. Because sometimes when people see someone like you, right, where now if you look at your life now, people might think, well, but he has this going for him, and he has this going for him, and he has this going for him, and there's a lot of assumptions made. Well, maybe his family was rich, and so he's been handed that, or
mm-hmm.
Things like that. And I think that it's important for people to tell their stories, so that it's like, hey, no, I wasn't handed any of this. I literally created all of this. And I think that it's really commendable that you not only did that, but now want to share it with other people, so that other people see that as possible. and that they can start taking those actions. So thank you
Yeah.
for sharing as what you did. And yeah, just so many gold nuggets in there. I'm like, which one do I want to talk about? I think I want to ask you about, the philosophy and science. And I am a little curious, like what you have to share about the philosophy and science. And, you are Dr. Justin Blaney. So you have,
That's right. Can't believe I've been letting you get away without addressing me as doctor.
I'll never make the mistake again. I took this leadership course. I'm gonna just tangent for a second. I took this leadership course, and the people who were in this course with me at one point, it was like a 7-month long training program, and at one point you declare like who you are in the world, and you're just exploring like creating whatever that is inside of your own leadership. And so at one point I created being a queen, and like just for fun, like what would it be like to be a queen? How would I present myself?
That's awesome. I love that.
Yeah. And it was really great. And so everyone in the course started calling me Queen Elizabeth. and to this day, there are still people that I know from that course who, I'm thinking of one person in particular who, if he ever calls me Elizabeth, he's like, "Oh, I'm sorry, Your Majesty."
Your Majesty, I love it.
Queen Elizabeth.
That's so fun.
Yeah, but anyway, in discovering your authentic self, that was one of the things that I wanted to really highlight was in discovering who you are authentically, in discovering your authentic self, that it just becomes so easy. And I always describe it as like a breath of fresh air. Like when when you've discovered something authentic for yourself, when it's like coming out of the water, it's like being able to breathe for the first time.
It really is. Yeah, it's such a relief.
yeah, relief. Yeah, absolutely. And because one of the things that I teach people is that it's not just about what you know, but it's also about how you experience things. Because I think that we also tend to overanalyze things, and that's also where people can get stuck.
Absolutely.
And so when people ask me, how do you know if you're always creating it, if it's always something that you're making up, how do you know that it's authentic? And that's how I describe it, is that it's like a breath of fresh air. It's like relief. And you also know, because of what you said, which is things start just becoming easy. It's
different than like, I was thinking about this, sorry to interrupt, but like,
oh, great.
I was thinking as you were talking, like the path of least resistance might be where we might go with this, but that's not what it is.
Yeah.
It's actually not the path of least resistance, but it is the path of happiness or like ease. So it's like, if you're doing, how do you decide between all these things? It's like, well, which one's going to make you happier?
Yeah.
That would be one way. Yeah. I actually heard something really cool about making decisions that I want to share, because I'm super excited about it. So I teach the undergrad level. I actually teach master's and doctoral students too, but I might like teaching undergrads best because it's just so fun.
Why you like teaching undergrads best?
It's just like they're so excited about getting going on life, and it's like a big Pandora's box. It's like a big mystery. It's like you're going to Disneyland. You've never seen any pictures of it. You have no idea what it's going to be like, but you've heard, a ton of things about it. Yeah. And you're just like really anxious to get to experience it for yourself. Yeah. And I think it's really cool energy. But by far the most common thing that comes up is like, I don't know what to do with my life. I'm graduating in 3 months and my life could go anywhere of a million directions. and what do I choose?
Right.
And so this cool thing I read, it was a study. They actually looked at people making decisions, and they compared people who make a lot of deliberations about their decisions to just making a quick decision.
Hmm.
They were comparing that paradigm to flipping a coin to decide.
Hmm.
So the study is basically what leads to more happiness: careful deliberation of your decisions or flipping a coin.
Hmm.
And what they found was essentially was the same.
Wow.
That careful deliberations did not lead to any more happiness than flipping the coin. But there was one really cool thing, and that is that if it was going to tip one way or the other, flipping a coin actually led to more happiness than deliberation. And the reason is because when we're debating something like a big life choice, should I move to take this job? We tend to go to the status quo, like I was talking about earlier.
Yeah.
And what they found in the study was when we're debating something like that, if we actually don't flip a coin, but just choose the thing that is least like the status quo, that will probably lead to the most happiness. And the other point of the study was we're basically very bad at predicting what choice is going to make us happier.
Uh-huh.
So in the end, if you really want to maximize happiness, the lesson is take the biggest risk you have available to you.
Wow.
Isn't that cool?
That's really cool. That's
And I think paralysis by analysis is like, again, one of the things that holds all of us back
oh yeah.
more than almost anything else. We just got to think about this a while longer, or we have this dream, I want to do this thing, but am I actually taking steps to do it, or am I just thinking about it?
Mm-hmm.
And then we tend to kind of like our life just kind of slips from our fingers as we've just been thinking about doing these things.
Mm-hmm.
And then we lose our chance. And so there's a lot of cliche quotes like, people don't regret the things that they do, they regret the things they didn't do. But it's true. Like, I really think it's true.
It's really true. So I did a journaling exercise at the beginning of this year to complete last year and then to, enter newly into this year, right? Which is interesting because I really don't often do that. I'm like, oh, okay, cool, it's a new year, it's fine. And but this year I was like, I'm really gonna take like a moment to recollect about this past year. And so I decided to write down, I was like, what are the things that I am really glad that I did, and what are the things that I regret? And as I was making this list, it really was this huge epiphany, because you do hear all of these motivational quotes like, you always regret what you don't do, blah, 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 blah. Like, we've heard it 1,000 times. But literally every single thing on my I'm glad I did this list was everything that I did. Like, even if it didn't go the way that I wanted it to go, or even if it turned out quote unquote badly, I was like, well, I'm really glad that I did it because it led to this, or, because for whatever reason, I was always really glad that I took the action, regardless of how it turned out. And
that's total affirmation of this study.
right. And everything on the regret list was everything that I didn't do. Every promise that I made that I didn't follow through on, every like thought that I had that I was like, oh, that'd be really cool, but then never took any action on it. Like, that was all the regret column. And I actually didn't even finish the journaling exercise because I was just so blown away. I was just like, well,
Wow.
I got the evidence. I have to do the thing. I just have to do the thing. Whatever that thing is,
Yeah.
I just gotta do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's a good segue into some of the science behind kind of our mindset about self-love, because
Right.
the reason why we don't do things, the reason why we make our decisions, really super helpful to think about it in terms of our evolutionary history.
Mm-hmm.
And if you think about when humans were evolving into who we are today, we did not have the same world that we have now. We had a completely different world. We were hunter-gatherers, and we were in the middle of the food chain. We tend to like to think of ourselves as like this big top of the food chain kind of animal, but really we're not naturally. We're middle of the food chain. We're pretty weak. We can't run very fast. You know, we can't swim very fast.
Right.
We're not very strong.
Yeah.
We make great food for a lot of predators. And so that one thing really caused us to evolve a lot of our mindsets. So for example, we have a huge over propensity to fear. So think about when your boss calls you, says, "Hey, I need to talk to you." We all think, "Am I getting fired?"
Right. Like worst
Right?
scenario, first thought.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We all do it. Like, so why would we do that if the last 100 times our boss called us into the office, it was never to fire us? You know? So it has nothing to do with making sense or track record. It's just when we were fighting for our survival 100,000 years ago, the people who had the most acute fear sense were the ones that survived, because even though they were probably miserable, constantly looking over their shoulder, they lived.
Right.
And so I think we forget a lot that we didn't evolve to be happy. Like, evolution isn't necessarily concerned with our happiness. It's concerned with us procreating, evolving and getting stronger, and us passing on our ideas, our DNA. Like, we want to expand.
Mm-hmm.
So the three primary drivers are procreate, expand, and evolve. And those three things really explain pretty much every instinct we have. Like, I've been watching this cool show on, called The Expanse. It's a sci-fi show, right? Have you heard of it?
I'm not a huge sci-fi person.
Okay.
I haven't heard
Since we're in quarantine, I've been watching more TV than usual, and I haven't been given one shit about it because anything to pass the time, A-okay. So
I've definitely been watching more TV than I have probably in the past year, in the past 3 months. For sure.
Zero judgment. It's a quarantine. You can do whatever the fuck you want. Good to go. But this show, The Expanse, is kind of like, it's a very realistic depiction of, let's say we had inhabited the solar system in like 300 years, and very scientifically accurate to the point where it really feels like this could like really be our future. But it's like such a hostile environment. Like, everybody except those that live on Earth in this story are constantly in danger of death and like experiencing all these horrendous things because the universe is not kind to, you know, human bodies. So I'm like, why would we do that? Like, why do we subject ourselves to these crazy things? And I'm like, we go to the bottom of the ocean where we can die from that. We climb these mountains. But it goes back to this, we have to expand, we have to evolve. There's no other explanation. Why would we go to such great costs to put ourselves into such great danger, right, and live such uncomfortable lives?
Totally.
Except that 100,000 years or 1,000,000 years ago, we got it baked into us that we're compelled to, even when it makes no sense. And that is basically what the vast majority of our motivations are.